Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred We See Died Laughing, and I'm here with another weekly wrap up. So I got loads of books read this week and I can't wait to tell you all about them. And the first book I read was Run for the Hills by Tom McCaughren. This is a book I got from O'Brien Press for review, and it's more of like a children's middle grade book, and it's basically about these group of foxes that are living in this area in Ireland, and they're wild foxes, and it's just this is part of a series, but I haven't read the rest of the series, but I went into this not really knowing what I was going to be reading. I didn't know whether I'd like it, but I can say I really enjoyed this book. It's about a fox called Vicky, and she ends up coming across these 3 different foxes one day, and they're all different colours, and she's really confused with this, that these foxes are different colours, and it turns out these foxes have escaped from a fur farm, and her and Vicky and her friends decide that they're going to help these other foxes and basically bring them somewhere where they can be safe and teach them how to be wild foxes again, and it kind of goes from there. This was really cute. It was very reminiscent for me of The Animals of Farthing Wood, which is something I read when I was younger. So I kind of got a lot of those feels. You have these animals being very wise. Sometimes with animal books it's almost like, not that the author is making a mockery of the animals, but it's something so sometimes very strange to have these animals that are very elegant in the wild and acting certain ways in cartoons and stuff like that. But I didn't feel like that at all with this one. I felt like the foxes were very natural, even though they were speaking to each other, and like, you know, I felt like everything about them was very natural and very fox-like, if that makes sense. But the descriptions in this are absolutely beautiful. The descriptions of nature, of the Irish countryside, was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. And I also really enjoyed some of the foxes' speech. Like, they had different words for some things than what we do. So they call the seagulls gok-goks because of like the sound that seagulls make. I thought that was really funny. And they call the moon, I think it's gloom glow they call the moon. And I just loved all those different bits, and this one was really informative as well, especially for children reading it about the fur farm industry, and you know, the basically just like what happens there. Like, the foxes were able to describe to the other foxes what was going on in this fur farm, and in a way that wouldn't be very violent or scary towards children, but very informative, and tell them in a way that wouldn't scare them what was going on and why it wasn't right. And I really loved that. And I actually didn't know, because the author has a little bit of a note at the end, but I didn't actually know the fur farming was still legal in Ireland, and it is. And for some reason I thought it had been banned, but it's not, and that really shocked me. So this is very like real. What's happening in this could be very real to what's happening somewhere in Ireland today, several places probably. So it was upsetting, but I'm glad that was put in, so I knew about it. But yes, I really enjoyed this, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished was Sailing to Sarantium by Guy Gavriel Kay. Yes, Katie, I finally finished a Guy Gavriel Kay book, and I'm so happy that you got me to read this, because I really enjoyed it. This is about a guy called Caius Crispus, and he's living in this kind of emperor of lands that is ruled by this one person, and he's basically sent to, he's like a mosaicist? I don't know how to say that word, but basically he is kind of a designer of mosaics and a builder and an architect and kind of all those in one. But he's basically sent to go to Sarantium, which is like the capital, to see the emperor, to build something for the emperor, and he goes off and he's travelling through a couple of different countries that are all owned, are all ruled by this one emperor, and it has a very kind of Roman Empire feel to it, I guess, which I enjoyed, because I do like those kind of books. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the description and the writing and how the characters were developed, especially Caius Crispus, who's our main character, Crispin. He's developed very well throughout it. He's kind of this really grumpy kind of bugger at the start of it, and by the end of it we see how smart and intelligent and kind he is, and I liked that journey with him. It was a kind of a long book. It was about between 500 and 600 pages, I think, and near the second half of it I did find myself growing wary, and kind of wondering where we were going from here, and not really sure where it would end, and yeah, so I was kind of ready for it to finish at that stage. At about between 400 and 500 pages I was ready to be done with the book. So there was that. But I did enjoy most of it. I would have liked a little bit more development for some of the female characters that are in the book, because they're kind of minor characters, but they're all very interesting. So I'm hoping in the second book a lot of those female characters will get more development, because I want to know more about them. And I really enjoyed, there's a relationship in this book between the Emperor and his Empress, and they are just so clever and so on the ball with each other, and I really enjoyed those scenes because they were just playing off each other, and they're basically one step ahead of everyone else in this big game they were playing. Really, really clever, and I really enjoyed all their scenes. So I gave this book a very strong 4 out of 5 stars. And hold on to your hats, because the next book is a book that I absolutely hated, and I wrote a very, very bad review for it on Goodreads, and it's probably the meanest review I've ever written for a book, and yeah, it was just so bad. This is a book I actually got for NetGalley for a review. It's The 100 Lies of Lizzie Lovett by Chelsea Sedoti, and it's basically about this girl called Hawthorne, and a young woman in her town goes missing, and this girl is kind of like the darling of the town. Everyone loves her, everyone knows about her, and she goes missing, and Hawthorne ends up kind of putting it upon herself that she's going to try and figure out what happened to her, this girl called Lizzie, and she basically ingratiates herself into Lizzie's life, and takes the job that is open because Lizzie is gone, so she takes her job. She ends up befriending Lizzie's boyfriend, and she's just completely obsessed with finding out what happened to Lizzie, and she's coming up with all these really stupid theories and stuff about what happened to her and why she's gone. And this book was just really bad. One of the main problems I had with this book is that Hawthorne is just a terrible person. Like, she just wasn't a nice character at all. Basically, I just found that Hawthorne is a very toxic person, and I couldn't blame anyone for not being friends with her, because I would not want to be around her. Even to the one friend she does have, she's extremely judgmental to her. She's not very nice to her. When her friend gets interest from her boy, she's very sarcastic and cruel about it. And I was just like, this is why no one likes you. It's nothing to do with you being a bit weird. It's nothing about you being quirky. It's that you're just not a nice person, and you think everyone needs to be obsessed with you. I thought a particular theory that Hawthorne came up with about Lizzie's disappearance made absolutely no sense, and it was really odd, and some people just went along with it, and I just don't know why. I'm not going to say what it is because it would be a spoiler, but for anyone who has read the book, you'll know what I'm saying. It was just so stupid, and it just made no sense. There's also a very problematic relationship here between Hawthorne and Lizzie's boyfriend, Enzo. Hawthorne is 17 years old and Enzo is 25, and Enzo has no problem hanging out with this 17-year-old all the time. And I just thought that was really strange. Like, why doesn't this guy have any friends? Why doesn't he have any family? Like, nothing ever came up. It was like he literally only had his girlfriend, and that was it. And he was so okay with being around a 17-year-old, and I felt there was a consent issue at one point, and it just made me feel creepy and ick. And like, I have read books where there's kind of those weird relationships, like All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood, which is like a 7-year-old and like a 20-year-old. But that was told in a really beautiful way, and this wasn't. This was just done wrong, and I didn't like it at all. I felt there was a very, very problematic way that mental health was shown in this book. There is an issue near the end of the book about mental health, and I just felt like some more explanation and depth would be needed. I don't think you can throw mental health into a book and mental health issues into a book without having appropriate discussions around it, and I definitely felt like this wasn't done in this book at all, so I really didn't like it. I'll leave my review down below, which has kind of a broader explanation of all the points that I've skimmed here, because I don't want to go on about this book too much, because frankly it doesn't deserve the time. It's a very bad book, and I would not recommend it to read at all. I really didn't like it. I gave it a 1.5 out of 5 stars just because I felt like the author can write. It was just the story that was problematic, but the writing itself was alright. I didn't mind the writing. It was just the story she was writing that was wrong. So I did give it a 1.5 stars, but I wouldn't recommend people to read this because it's just not worth it. The next book I read was The Demon King by Cinda Chima. This is a book I've actually seen a lot on BookTube, and I didn't realise it because the book I got from the library had a completely different cover, but I'll put the cover that I've seen most used up on here so you guys know what I'm talking about. And this cover actually makes a lot more sense than the cover that I had, because I don't know where the image on the cover I had came from, because the image on this cover actually has something to do with the story. But this is kind of a YA fantasy, and it's about a boy called Hans Alistair, and he comes across this kind of amulet, and from these wizards. He takes it off these young wizards who are messing around in the woods, and this amulet has something to do, has like something to do with this wizard that was in power a very, very long time ago. And then we're also getting a point of view from Risa, who is the princess heir, so she is going to become queen of this kingdom. And they're both going on these two different journeys, but their journeys are kind of growing closer to each other. And I can't really say too much. This is actually a very hard book to explain until you actually start reading it and you just kind of go with the flow. But it's actually quite a hard book to summarise plot-wise. But I did really, really enjoy this book. It was a lovely fast read, as it was YA fantasy. After reading the denser fantasy book that was Sailing to Sarantium, I was kind of happy to go on to another fantasy book that was just a little bit faster to read and a little bit easier to fly through quickly. I did really enjoy this one. I really enjoyed the world building. I thought we got a really good feel of the kingdom, and we got some glimpses about the other kingdoms surrounding this one. I really enjoyed the character of Hans, who I thought was I just found him so interesting. He had so many different faces. Like at first, when we first meet him, he's this boy who is hanging around with these clan people, and they're kind of like almost like native people to the land. But he's not one of them. He's kind of been adopted into the tribe. But you can feel his uncertainty and kind of he's very kind of shy and unsure when he's in this place because he wants to be part of them so badly, but he can't. So I thought that was who we were getting. But then it turns out he is kind of like an ex-street lord, so people are scared of him. When he goes into like the town, people are scared of him because they think that he's going to like knife them and rob them, and he's like a completely different person. And then you have him as just Hans, who's looking after his mom and his sister and is like a big brother and a son, and that's a completely different person again. And I really loved going into all of his chapters and figuring out who we would get, whether we would get like Hunt's alone, the wannabe clans person, Cuffs Alistair, the street lord, or Hans Alistair, the big brother. So I really, really enjoyed that. It was very exciting. I did like Risa as well, who was the princess. I found her quite tough and plucky and stuff like that. There were moments in this where I felt like a lot of things were staring Risa in the face, and she just like wasn't getting it. Like there was so much obvious things that were happening, and I could see where it was going, and she was being so blind and just like passing this stuff off as like nothing, and I was like, oh my god, can you not see what is about to happen? So that was kind of frustrating just on my reader's part. But yes, overall I did really enjoy this book, and I'm looking forward to going into the next one and seeing their stories develop more and hopefully even grow more intertwined. So yes, I did enjoy this, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The last book I read was The River at Night by Erica Ferencik. This is a book I started reading yesterday at like 5 o'clock, and I finished it by 8 because I could not put it down. It was so good. This is about a group of middle-aged women, and they go on this kind of white water rafting trip. They want to kind of like they've been friends for a really long time, and they do a holiday every year, and their more athletic friend has kind of convinced them to go on this kind of wilderness exploration kind of holiday where they're doing all these tough activities, and they're kind of a bit reluctant, but they kind of go along with it anyway. But then they end up being like stranded in the wild, and it kind of turns into this thriller, and it was so good. I really enjoyed this one. It kind of, by the time it got into where they were like having to survive in the woods alone and fearing for their life, it got really intense, and I just had to keep going. I could not put it down until I finished it and found out what happened. I really enjoyed the fact that this is about a group of women who are in their late 30s, like the youngest is 35 and the oldest is 39, I think. And I just really enjoyed the fact that they were older women. Well, older, like, 30s are still young, but they would be like middle-aged, almost, instead of just being like a really fit group of 20-somethings or like a group of lads who might be used to a bit of roughness in the wild kind of thing. I did enjoy that. The only problem I would have had with this is that it didn't really get into like kind of the surviving wilderness bit until 50% through, and I was kind of hoping there was a lot of build up to it, and there was a build up to like these girls' relationships. They'd known each other for 15 years, so they knew each other really well. They were able to gauge each other's moods. They were able to deal with each other's kind of freakouts and arguments and stuff like that. It wasn't something that would break up the group completely. They were there for each other the whole time, even if they would argue. But I felt like the actual wilderness bit didn't start till 50% through, so I felt I would have liked that to have started between maybe 25-30% into the book, and not have so much build up to when it actually became a survival story. So that was the only thing I really had a problem with. But I did really enjoy this. It was really thrilling. I think it would make a really great movie with older actresses playing this. Just, you know, this real badass tough women, you know, surviving the wild and fearing for their lives and stuff. I think that would be really, really cool to see. So yeah, I think that would be great. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I do really recommend this one because it was a really fast, thrilling read. So yes, so that is everything I read this week. Please let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye!